Hey everybody, it's Amanda. And it is time for our morning Bible study.
Good morning. Welcome. We're the Sermon on the Mount has come to an end. And we may or may not get through a whole chapter today. We'll see. But it'll start picking up a little bit here as far as different things will start happening. Boom, 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 boom. So anyway, I hope everybody's doing good. Hope you're enjoying Matthew. Speak. I'm just rambling while you share your links.
You're doing a fine job. Frankly, I think I'm getting better at this link sharing thing. Where actually, I think what it is the auto. As soon as I say that, I mess it up. The auto thing knows what I'm going to say because I always say the same thing. So they usually do a pretty good job helping me get set up. But it's been good. You know, the other day we went live in our on our regular YouTube channel when things were going crazy, and we went live and we were trying to encourage everybody. And we've got a lot of really positive feedback about that. And I want to say that I'm just really thankful about that, because I think the Lord is definitely blessing the online ministry that we have, and blessing. I hope it's a blessing to you guys. You guys are a blessing to us. And I was talking to Ricky this morning, our son in Wisconsin, and you know he talks to us and he tells us the things he's excited about in his ministry there, and then we talk to him and share with him things about that we're excited about with our ministry here. And it's a really sweet. It's a different kind of fellowship with your grown children when you can have those kinds of conversations. And I'm really thankful that I really am that the Lord's working in his life, working in our life, and it's just been really good. So anyway, I'm very excited about that. Just had to say that. Made my morning. Anyway, all right. Let's get to the study. You guys ready? So we're in Matthew chapter 8. And like Rick said, we just finished the Sermon on the Mount. But I want to remind you that Matthew's purpose was to show Christ to the Jews. That's essentially what the whole purpose of the whole book of Matthew is, right? And so when we were doing the Sermon on the Mount, the last thing that we read, in Matthew chapter 7, was about Christ speaking with authority. So we're actually going to, in Matthew chapter 8, continue with the idea that Christ has authority, right? So there's actually going to be, we're going to talk in the first part of it. There's three times that Christ heals. And it's showing like his authority over our physical bodies, right? And then they'll talk a little bit about the cost of following Christ, because that's important to know. And then we talk about how Christ stills the storm and how he has authority over nature, right? Then we have this story at the end of Matthew chapter 8, which is Christ getting rid of the demons, the demon-possessed pigs, right? Which actually is part of the story of the maniac Gadara. This one does not include the maniac. This version just talks about pigs. But anyway, the idea here is that he has authority over even spiritual wickedness. You know what I mean? And it actually rolls into chapter 9, where he hears the paralytic. And it actually, you know, we always think of the story of the paralytic as he has power to heal and the faith of many and all of those things. But actually, Christ, what he's proving is that he has power to forgive sin. That's actually what that passage is about. He says he actually heals them so they know that he has the power to forgive sin. So he has power over sin. So, and all of that, and at that point is where we actually start to read the story where Christ calls Matthew himself. So Matthew's kind of even explaining his sort of testimony, all the things that happened before he came to the Lord. You know what I mean? So all of this is Matthew continually showing the Jews Christ and his power, showing who he is, showing that he's God. He has power and authority to be the one to come and be the Messiah. So it's really amazing as you look at the book of Matthew as a whole, everything comes together. So anyway, so the first part are the three times that he heals and shows power over the body, right? And so the first one, of course, he heals the leper, which that's just like a physical sickness that at that time was a death sentence, right? And then of course you have the story of the centurion's faith, which he heals from a distance. Like they're all just different kinds of ways that he heals. And then he has the time where he heals Peter's mother-in-law. And so, and then he says even at the end of that story, then he healed all these different people. Like he was continually doing it. So it's just the Lord healing people, but in different ways. It was never like the same thing. And one thing I want to say too, and I know I'm just talking, sorry, is that a lot of times when people have healing ministries now, it all looks the same. We've seen the things on TV, and I'm not trying to be a mocker or anything, but it's like, they hit someone and they jump back and they're healed, right? You don't see that here. That's not what Christ does at all. You know what I mean? The way that he handles things are completely different, and it's not a show. He's just doing what needs to be done. So anyway, so with that being said, I'll read the first story, which is the leper. And that's just verses 1 to 4. And so I'm going to read that. And then as we go through, I'll read the different sections. Is that okay? Mm-hmm. I know I've talked a lot. Sorry.
You're fine. You're fine.
Anyway. All right. So we're in Matthew chapter 8, starting in verse 1. It says, when he was come down from the mountain, great multitudes followed him. Mm-hmm. And behold, there came a leper and worshipped him, saying, Lord, if thou wilt, thou canst make me clean. And Jesus put forth his hand and touched him, saying, I will. Be thou clean. And immediately his leprosy was cleansed. And Jesus saith unto him, see thou tell no man, but go thy way, show thyself to the priest, and offer the gift that Moses commanded for a testimony unto them. And that's the story of the leper. And it's just a simple story, just a simple tale that Christ came down and there were multitudes following him. And this one little leper comes up to him humbly. We've talked a lot about humility in Matthew and in other things in recent days. And he just says, Lord, if it's your will, you can make me clean. Mm-hmm. And he says, I will.
It on me?
I am.
Okay. No, I don't know. I was waiting.
It's one of my favorite stories, but I've already talked so much.
Mm-hmm. Continue. Jesus came down from the mountain. There were people waiting on him. They followed him. I see a picture in my mind of people waiting on God, and that's a good thing. Mm-hmm. Behold, there came a leper and worshipped him, saying, Lord, like you just said, if thou wilt, thou canst make me clean. What I wrote by that verse in my Bible was faith, because that's what the leper had. He had faith. He had faith that Jesus Christ could make him clean, that he had the ability and the power to do so. Mm-hmm. And he proved that he did not just think of Jesus as some amazing doctor, because he worshiped him. He worshiped. He had faith that this person that I'm talking to, Christ, is from heaven. Mm-hmm. He worshiped him and he believed that he could make him clean. Mm-hmm. And I also wrote in my Bible that just the expression or that phrase, if thou wilt, thou canst make me clean. And I wrote down in my Bible a personal request. It is good, like we talked the other night from 2 Chronicles, to ask that the Lord would heal the land. That is a good thing. To think about the needs of many, to think about the needs of the day and how the multitudes of people around the world are affected by it, and that we all need the Lord. You should think about your brothers and your sisters and even the unbelievers that don't know the Lord. We should have compassion on everyone. But even with that being said, folks, the goal of life is for you to have a personal relationship with the Lord. I want everyone to. That's why we talk so much about evangelism. But we personally need to have that relationship with the Lord, and we can make those personal requests. And understand, the leper is sick, and he makes a request for he to be healed, for him himself to be healed, a personal request. And I wrote in my Bible, like salvation is a personal request. That's where a lot of people miss it. That's where I missed it for almost a year, because I through some things, some, I guess, sermon really that I had heard. I was convinced in my mind 100% that Jesus Christ died for sinners, and he did. But it took about a year for me to hear the gospel preached directly to me, where I realized I had to make a personal request. Yes, he died for sinners, but for me to be saved, I needed to make it personal and say, Lord, you died for me, Richard Beale. And Richard Beale, I want to be saved. And that's when I got saved. And folks, it is good to pray for the multitudes, but the other side of that coin, it's good to pray for your own needs and make those personal requests. The Lord is a personal God, and he knows you, and he wants you to know him. Okay. So, but again, I will point out in this verse that he worshiped, and then he knew that the Lord could do it, and he had strong faith, and the Lord honored his faith. I will be thou clean.
I didn't know if you were pausing for me.
No,
or if you were
I
making
was
a pause.
pausing. Go right ahead.
Sometimes you pause and you have like a dramatic pause. And I don't want to jump in and say anything if you're like got something you want to say.
All out of drama today.
All right. Well, that this is the passage that's preached in my all-time favorite sermon.
Right.
It's called "Looking for the Wounded," and it's by Clyde Box.
Mm-hmm.
My all-time favorite sermon. And I just love the way that the Lord deals with him gently. Mm-hmm. You can imagine this man who has this disease that he knows is a death sentence. And he's almost saying it to himself, that he, like, if he wants to, he can make me clean. But he's saying it to God, mm-hmm. which is, I guess, the difference. You know what I mean? If he'd said it to himself, that's a different attitude than the faith to say directly to the Lord, if you will, you can make me clean. And the Lord just having the compassion and saying, I will, mm-hmm. be thou clean. And I like the gentleness of it almost more than I like some of the more extreme things. I can just pity this. I can just picture this person, and I have great pity for them, mm-hmm. and their circumstances. But I feel like too, there's so many times in my life where I've reached the point of brokenness, and it's like, Lord, you can change this if you want to. And sometimes you hear him say, I will, and I'll change it. And he can change the circumstances. But then at the end, he says, he tells him not to tell anyone. I always wondered why he said that when I was a kid. I remember reading these passages as a child in church. And it's like, why didn't you want him to tell anyone? Why wouldn't you want him to go and brag, tell everybody? And I thought, well, first of all, obviously, Christ was meek. It's not that he didn't have power, that he had it under control. And you can imagine the more people knew, the more people were going to come to him. And it's not that he didn't want to help people. It's that he had a mission, and he had to be focused on that mission. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But
yeah, I wrote down in my notes that he had compassion for this man, and he healed him. Mm-hmm. And then in this chapter, he heals many more. So it's not that he was opposed to healing people, but he did not want them to go and start telling everybody about it, because the Lord did not come for a healing service. He came for the cross. He came. That was the highlight of why he came, to die for the sins of all, so all of us could go to heaven and have our sins forgiven and be reconciled with God. That is the goal for the birth of Christ, and why he grew, and why he went to the cross. So that's why I would say he would say, tell no one about this. It's because this is not why I came. I came for a very specific purpose.
Yeah, and again, I think that's another indication. A lot of these healing ministries, I say that in quotes. I don't really think they're real. At least none of the ones that I've ever seen. I don't think they're godly or come from the Spirit of God at all. But if someone had a genuine power from God to heal, and like we said, Christ could heal, but his purpose, his mission was to go to the cross. So if someone has the power to heal and their purpose is different, then they will heal as they go to accomplish that purpose, right? But you will see that they're going to accomplish a purpose. Whereas a lot of these other folks, they say that healing is their purpose. Well, okay, if healing is your purpose, then why aren't you walking into every children's hospital that you see? I've heard someone else say that, and I think it's absolutely accurate. Why aren't you going everywhere where people are broken? If that's your purpose, go heal. You know what I mean? But it just seems like there's always something underhanded behind it.
Well, I think most people, well, I don't say most people, because there is a lot of people who are fooled by that kind of thing. But I mean, you can understand that what happens today in these quote healing services, and I've never been to one, seen one, except for a few minutes on television and some of these religious programs that they put on. I mean, think about it. You have a little older lady who can barely walk. Oh, I have a heart to heal you. Make sure you get a ticket and come on early and go, and we're go find your seat. It's up those stairs. You know what I mean? It's like you make it as hard on grandma as you possibly can. She's coming to get healed, and you make it that hard. Exactly. Go to her. You know what I mean? There's something, it's all about spectacle. It's all about performance. It's all about, well, we talked about it yesterday, false prophets.
Yeah, we did. And, and here's the other thing. Occasionally people do experience healing in spite of what the circumstances are. Did you ever see, there's like a Steve Martin movie?
In spite. That's
exactly.
important.
Now, because of, have you ever seen that Steve Martin movie where he's like a faith healer?
I know that he did one.
Yeah, I remember seeing it when I was a kid. And there's a boy, and I think he can't walk or something. At the end, he walks. And Steve Martin is in the movie. He is a knowing charlatan. He understands what he's doing. And he's as shocked as anyone that the boy is healed. But what's evidenced in the movie, and I think that is actually what happens, is ultimately it's portrayed as it's the boy's faith that actually heals him. It has nothing to do with Steve Martin and what he's doing, and the show, the ruse that's going on. It has to do with the faith of the individual. And, ultimately, as we go through all of these different circumstances, faith has something to do with the healing. Do you know what I mean? There's it's always a faith aspect to it. So,
well, may I say
I feel
something?
like it's important to mention.
May I say something that's kind of off the text, but I want to make a point about the faith and the healing. Because I don't want someone to get confused. God's will will be done, okay? And God gets his way. And the thing is that sometimes, many times, we don't know what his way is. So we pray for healing. And it may be God's will for someone to be healed today in 2021. Or it may be God's will for them to leave this life and come home to him. So my point is that don't be dismayed or upset and get to this point where you say, well, they just should have had more faith. That's what I'm trying to cover. Because we're reading the text here, and the man's faith pleased the Lord, and the man was healed. And it was due to the fact that he had faith in Jesus.
Ultimately, because Christ willed it.
But my point is this, is that the Lord will answer prayer, but he will answer prayer the way he sees fit. If someone has cancer today, all right, I'm a believer, I'm a man, I have cancer, I ask for the Lord to heal me. Now he heals me. It may be one of two ways. He may heal me physically here on earth, and I'll continue my life on, doing live events with my wife and all kinds of stuff. Or he'll say, son, I'm going to heal you, and you're coming home with me. You see, death for the Christian is not failure. Death for the Christian is healing.
Victory.
Yeah. I finally took off this robe of flesh that gets sick and gets old and gets damaged and gets wore out. And now I'm in glory where there is no sickness or no tears and no pain. You see, death is actually, and I'm not trying to be dramatic here, but I want you to think about it. Death is a form of healing too. To take off the world and all the things the world can do to you. To go, if cancer was destroying this body, the Lord could heal me and take me to a place where there was no cancer. So understand this. You pray for healing, the Lord will answer a prayer, but it will be his way, not necessarily the way we think he'll do it. He may have a reason to keep you around on this earth for a bit longer. He wants to use you in some way in his work for a bit longer, and he'll heal you here, and it will be for his glory. Or your body will perish, but he will heal you. It's not like he's forsaken you. Oh, you died on earth. No, your body died. Your soul lives. My soul will never die. His will might be that this body will die, but my soul will be taken out of this body and it will be with him in heaven. So understand that. Okay. I just wanted to make a point there for faith, because there's always that one person who says, well, they just didn't have enough faith. You had enough faith, it would have happened. Well, you can have great faith and the Lord will honor your faith, but it may be different than how you thought he would do it. Okay. But in this text, he did heal the man physically on earth.
I had something I want to say. My mind just went blank.
All right. Well, I will go with that from this text that Jesus has compassion for the sick. Mm-hmm. You know, we talk a lot, almost all about spiritual things, salvation, getting saved. But I know that in the live chat and people that watch us, a lot of us have burdens. There's things going in our lives that are sicknesses and all kinds of things. The Lord is compassionate for that. It's not that he looks at me and he says, well, I want him saved, but I don't care anything else about him. You know, he cares about sicknesses. He cares about things that we go through on earth. And he has compassion on us. He sure does. And I know this. He says, I will be thou clean. The Lord's word is enough. I know.
I do want to say before we go on to the centurion that one of the things that Jesus did say in this passage, what he said to the man to go show himself to the priest and offer the gift to Moses that Moses commanded for a testimony unto them. And so I just want to mention to you that remember that Matthew is talking to Jews, and this is him showing that Christ knew and was adhering to following the law and encouraging others to do so as well, which was that was significant. If he was going to be the Messiah, he had to be a part of all these things. So even though it's not something we haven't talked about Leviticus yet, we're going to talk about Leviticus. I'm assuming after we do Matthew. I think we're heading back to Leviticus then. But there was this process that they had to go through to show themselves to be clean, so that they could then be allowed back in the general population, because lepers had to be kept separate. So the idea here is that Matthew is showing that Christ
quarantined.
Let's not go there. But Matthew was showing that Christ understood the value of God's law, and he upheld it and was part of it. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So there's that. So if you're ready, we can go. I'll read about the centurion. Let's see, starting at verse 5 to verse 13. It says, and when Jesus entered into Capernaum, there came unto him a centurion, beseeching him and saying, Lord, my servant lieth at home sick of the palsy, grievously tormented. And Jesus saith unto him, I will come and heal him. The centurion answered and said, Lord, I am not worthy that thou shouldest come under my roof, but speak the word only, and my servant shall be healed. For I am a man under authority, having soldiers unto me. And I say to this man, go, and he goeth, and to another, come, and he cometh, and to my servant, do this, and he doeth it. Jesus heard it, he marveled and said to them that followed, Verily I say unto you, I have not found so great faith, no, not in Israel. And I say unto you that many shall come from the east and west, and shall sit down with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the children of the kingdom shall be cast out into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And Jesus said unto the centurion, Go thy way, as thou hast believed, so be it done unto thee. And his servant was healed in the selfsame hour. So when I read this, there's just so many things that you could talk about here. But the one thing I'll say is that Jesus could have healed anyone with just a word. He actually came to them, and he was going to come and heal for their benefit, so they could see it, so that he was the one going and doing it. And the point was just to show, hey, I'm here, and I'm here to heal you, and I can do these things. Because Christ was, again, his main purpose was going to the cross, and he had to show who he was before he went to the cross. So the idea, he could have done it at any point, but the idea that he was willing to go places just to demonstrate who he was to people so they could see his love and his care for them, I think that shows a lot about who he was. And also the centurion too, that he understood it in a way that no one else did, according to Christ.
5. Okay. Okay, so when we were talking about the leper just a moment ago, I made a point to say that personal requests are important, because you do have that personal relationship with the Lord. Okay, before I said that it is right to pray for others. And we have an example of that here with the centurion, because he went and he talked to Jesus face to face. But do you understand that when a Christian has a prayer life, even though physically you're not face to face with Christ, you can still talk to God on the same level. His ear is open to us now, just like his ear was open to the centurion then. Okay, you can see this as a picture of prayer, because pray means to ask, and when you pray for someone else to be healed or helped or aided in some way, you're essentially doing what the centurion did here. You're going to the Lord on behalf of someone else. And he prayed for him to heal him. He asked the Lord for help. I wrote down that where he says, I am not worthy that thou shouldest come under my roof or roof. He certainly had a John the Baptist moment, because you remember John the Baptist said, I'm not worthy. I have need to be baptized of you, and you come to me to be baptized. He talks about, he was talking about one cometh before me or after me, whose shoes I'm not worthy to bear, or look, yeah, you got it, to put on, And John the Baptist totally and completely understood that even though he was the forerunner of Jesus Christ, he was not greater than Jesus Christ. And this centurion has that same understanding. He has a good understanding of who Christ is. And it says that he's a man of authority in verse 9. And that reminds me of Nicodemus in John chapter 3, because he was a leader of the Pharisees. So men of authority sought the Lord.
Which again, this whole section is trying to show Christ's authority.
Yeah. So oddly enough, sometimes we see people who have authority in our life, and it puffs them up, and they start to feel like they're God on earth, and everyone should listen to them, and their word is final. But you know what? Wise men who have authority understand that they still have a greater authority, God, and they know that when in need, they ought to go to God, and they do. So here's a fella with authority. He was a boss. You could say it like that. He had folks under him, and he saw the need to go to the Lord. Okay. Verily I say unto you, Jesus said, I have not found so great faith, no, not in Israel. Again, I will say this: faith pleases God. Hebrews chapter 11, without faith, it is impossible to please God. You say to yourself, well, I want to be a Christian, but I haven't been saved yet. You know why? Because you haven't put your faith in the Lord. Once you put your faith, your trust, your reliance, your dependence on Christ, you'll be saved. We say, well, as a Christian, I'm a Christian today. I feel like God's a million miles away. Well, let me ask you, are you living a life of faith? Or are you living a life of doubt? Christians can still get wary and start to doubt whether or not God's in something and get away from the Lord. If you want to live a life of strength, God's strength, in 2021, it's much needed. Courage.
Word of the year.
Well, courage isn't something that you can have as a believer apart from God. You can have courage and strength.
I don't think you can have courage without faith.
When you're close to God, and folks, that's a life of faith. You can't escape it. Without faith, it is impossible to please him. You have to have faith. And the Lord Jesus was pleased by this man's faith.
I also think that what he's saying here too is kind of in reference to the idea of salvation as well, because he says that he's not found so great a faith, not in Israel, not in his own people.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? And then he goes on to say
that in the next verse.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Then he goes on to say, all these people are going to come from the east and west and sit down with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But the children of the kingdom, he's like, but the Israelites, the Jewish folks, he's like, they're going to be cast into outer darkness where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. And the reason why? Because they were leaning on their birthright, the idea that they were born as the children of the kingdom. So they thought that automatically made them worthy to go sit down with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in heaven. And he's like, no, what makes the difference is the faith that's coming to the Centurion, the faith that's going to come from the people in all other places. That is what's going to bring them to the kingdom of heaven, not the fact that he was born a certain way.
You catch what he's saying? Mm-hmm. Number one, we made the point that it's faith. That's what pleases the Lord. Mm-hmm. And number two, in verse 11, he starts by explaining that there are going to be people coming from all over. Not folks that came from the nation of Israel. There are going to be folks coming from all over. Richard Beale type people. You know what I mean? Just regular Joe Schmoes kind of thing. And they're going to come and they are going to sit down at the table with Abraham, Isaac, Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. That they're going to be included because of Christ and because of salvation that's worldwide if you put your faith in him. But the children of Israel, the people that the Messiah actually came from, they'll be perishing, separated from God, weeping and wailing, gnashing of teeth in eternity. And why is that? Because God's plan has always been the same. God made a physical plan with Abraham here on earth to multiply his seed and give him a land. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, the Lord's perspective was always this of a spiritual need that mankind had. And the Messiah was coming from the nation of Israel, coming out of the nation of Israel. And folks, there's a big difference, and we all get saved the same. And whether you're Jew or Gentile, whether you live in North Carolina or Maryland or wherever you live, to be saved, to become God's child, is by faith. It's not about what family or nation you were born in physically. It's were you born again spiritually in God's kingdom from above. In John chapter 1, Jesus, this was referring to Christ, and it began in verse number, let's say 10. He, Jesus, was in the world. Now, he's in the world here. It's explaining it. He was in the world, and the world was made by him. Jesus Christ is the creator. You remember John, forgive me, you remember Genesis. Let there be light. Mm-hmm. Well, there was light. The centurion says, hey, if you just speak the word only, my servant will be healed. He says, okay. And his word heals the man. Mm-hmm. All right, so he was in the world, and the world was made by him. Christ is the creator. But the world, mankind, knew him not. He, Jesus, came unto his own, the Jewish nation, and his own received him not. But as many as received him, folks like me, folks like many of you, To them, but as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his name. Does the Lord want Israel to be saved? Absolutely. But the point that I'm making today is salvation is open to all. It's open to all. And Jesus was making a point here by saying that, hey, you know, when it's all said and done, there will be people who should have trusted in me, who should have known that I was coming, that I was going to be the Messiah, and they did not see it. They would not put their faith in me. But there were many outside of the nation that did. And truly, there have been people all over this world who've been saved because of this Messiah, Jesus Christ. And there are people being saved today, you know. So,
as thou hast believed, so be it done as thee. The servant was healed in the self same hour. Do you mind if I go on?
please.
Okay. So we'll do.
But I will say this. I'm sorry. I just want
That's okay. I figured I'd ask first.
Jesus said unto the centurion, go thy way, and as thou hast believed, he put his faith in him, it was done unto thee. The servant was healed the selfsame hour. You just read that.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's faith in God. That's what the centurion had. And listen, the Lord honors faith.
Mm-hmm.
God is pleased by faith. God honors faith. And listen, the Lord said he'd heal him, and he was healed that selfsame hour. What's the point? The Lord keeps his promises. Again, salvation. For whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. Romans 10:13. It's a promise. When you call on the Lord with faith, he has promised to save us. He keeps his promise. You don't have to wonder if you're saved or not. You don't have to wonder if you lost it or not. Because God is a promise keeper. He cannot break his promise because he's holy and righteous. He's God. So again, you put your faith and hope in the Lord, knowing that he is the promise keeper. So, go ahead.
Verses 14 to 17, it says, and when Jesus was come into Peter's house, he saw his wife's mother laid and sick of a fever.
Mother-in-law.
And he touched her hand, and the fever left her, and she arose and ministered unto them. When the even was come, they brought unto him many that were possessed with devils, and he cast out the spirits with his word, and healed all that were sick, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by Isaiah the prophet, saying, himself took our infirmities and bare our sicknesses. Okay, so there's so many things to point out in this chapter. I mean, obviously, we're continuing talking about healing. And so you can't miss the fact that Christ himself, at this point, no one asked him. He just saw that Peter's mother was sick and went and laid his hand on her, and the fever left her. And then she rose up and was able to minister. And sometimes the Lord, of his own goodwill, heals us. Just of his own goodwill does it. Mm-hmm. And it gives us the opportunity to minister unto him. I think that's important. It's not worth, I think would be remiss. Sorry, I got so many thoughts in my head. We would be remiss in not mentioning the fact that Peter had a mother-in-law. That's a whole nother conversation. And then, of course, there's also the idea that he continued to heal and deal with spiritual sickness. And that the point of that was, again, the showing that Christ had authority, that it would be fulfilled what Isaiah the prophet had said. And we said, again, all throughout the book of Matthew was pointing out how Christ fulfills prophecy. And this was just another time where Christ was fulfilling prophecy in Isaiah. So there's just, it's just a little couple of verses, and yet there's all these different things going on that are relevant that we should cover.
You did point it out. Isaiah.
I just pointed them all out.
Yeah, Isaiah said that he would heal and bear our sicknesses and burdens and such. And again, another reason why Israel should have seen it, but they didn't. Some did, but by and large, most did not. But a point to point out about the Lord, in verse 15, he heals with touch. In verse 16, he heals by his word. Okay. So
I said there's a lot of little details in this one, like couple of verses. You could talk about it forever.
But I mean, all of this proves that he is God.
Yeah, that's ultimately what it was.
Yeah. And that's something to point out, because a lot of people, I hear it several times a year. Just that people will say this. Well, where in the Bible does it say that Jesus is God? He never. It doesn't seem like he ever said that he was God. He did. He did several times. If you've seen me, you've seen the Father. I mean, what was he saying to the disciples? He's saying, I'm God. Okay. I and my Father, we're one. John 10, he's saying he's God, But here,
showing it, which is more than words.
Yeah. The leper worshiped him and he allowed it. It's funny. It's been pointed out by others before that when angels came to people in the Bible, if anyone worshiped them, they refused the worship because angels don't want to be worshiped. Satan did. And that's why he was a fallen angel, got kicked out of heaven. He wanted to rise up and be like God. Angels who are not fallen understand that they're not to be worshiped. Jesus receives worship here, proving that he is God. And here, I mean, he has the attributes. He can do the works of God. He can heal
over the body, like we said, power over nature. Who has power over our body but God? Because even when you talk about angels or even Satan himself, I can't think of any examples where he could physically make changes within the body because we're God's creation. He can't do that. You have the stilling the storm. It's power over nature. Who can do that but God? Power over the demons and the wicked spirits. Who can do that but God? Who's greater than them but God? And whether he actually, and he did say it, like you said, but even if he didn't, even if he never said anything remotely like it, who can do these things but God?
And I've heard it said before, there's a lot of laws in life, the law of this, the law of that. I'm not a scientist. So give me a law.
Thermodynamics.
That's what I was going to say, but I knew I wasn't going to say it right. That a miracle is the Lord setting aside laws and doing something totally abnormal, supernatural, something that we know is not. This is not normal. It's something outside of a law of science, of nature, and the Lord can do that. Leprosy, for example, untreated, especially back in this day, it leads to death, period. The idea of somebody being healed and cleansed and made whole is a miracle. And the Lord stopped the leprosy and reversed it, healed the man. And that is a miracle. And that proves again that he is God. Okay.
Parts you want to talk about in here? I think it's worthwhile. Like I said, I really think it's worthwhile to mention that Peter had a mother-in-law. I think one of the greatest confusions that people have in the world is about Peter. And of course, largely that's part of the Catholic community. They think that Peter was like the first pope or something, and that he was unmarried, and it's part of all of their doctrine. And here we see the Bible literally says that Peter had a wife. He had a mother-in-law. And so I've heard a preacher say, and I've quoted it before, he said, any man that goes and gets a mother-in-law without a wife is a fool. The idea here is that, he was married.
Yeah.
He was just a disciple. No different than you or I. And that should make us really be thankful that the Lord he's not a respecter of persons. You know what I mean? When he said just a moment ago that all these people were going to come from the east and west and sit down with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, we think of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as like the pillars of the faith. And yet they're not any greater than us. We're going to sit down and eat with them in the kingdom of heaven. You know what I mean? The Lord, it's not about us as individuals. It's about him. And there's no hierarchy. So I really feel like we've made a mistake if we start saying this person is greater than this person. You know what I'm saying? It's a mistake that we make, and it hinders our Christian walk. That rather than admiring the God of those men, we're admiring the men. And we've got to really be careful to not set other people higher than us, to just understand that God is who we worship and no one else.
Well, I mean, somebody will say, well, somebody will be confused by that. And I mean, in all seriousness, it's because God is the only one who can handle it.
Mhm.
You know, we talk about giving God the glory. God gets all the glory. It's because he can handle it.
Mhm.
You know, there's other reasons for it, but that's one that it hits me, because glory on this earth puffs people up and destroys people.
Yeah.
You can't be number one for too long before you get so arrogant and puffed up that you honestly destroy yourself. You become out of touch with everyone, and you really start to think you're something you're not. The Lord was God, first place, preeminence. Yet he still humbled himself, came to this earth, put on human flesh, and died for the sins of all. You know, the sinless Lamb of God dying for sinners. You know, the only one that could do that was a God who is not tainted by pride. And I'll say it again, a good reason a good thought here to understand why God gets all the glory is because God's the only one that can handle it.
I said, I'm proof, and Sarah is proof that God does heal. They should have been dead or worse off than they are, but they can live independently and do normal everyday things. I'm sure the Lord did that because he's given you many gifts to be able to be a help and a blessing to other people. So he does that today. And he's showing all this in his word so that we understand that he's capable of this. We can still go to him. He's still available to us. We can all still go to him now with our concerns and things, just like the leper did, just like the centurion did. We can go to, like the leper did, for ourselves and ask. We can go like the centurion did and pray for others. You know, there's opportunities where the Lord might just see us and touch us of his own, will. But the idea is that he can do it. He is there and he is accessible to us and he wants to be. So it said there were many that came to him that it would be fulfilled like it was spoken of the prophet. And if I got a few minutes, I might even read the next couple of verses. Do you think that's okay? It says, now when Jesus saw the great multitudes about him, he gave commandment to depart to the other side. And a certain scribe came and said unto him, Master, I will follow thee whithersoever thou goest. And Jesus saith unto him, the foxes have holes, and the birds of the air have nests. The Son of Man hath not where to lay his head. And another of his disciples said unto him, Lord, suffer me first to go and bury my father. But Jesus said unto him, Follow me, and let the dead bury their dead. So the idea here is that Jesus cares that he's available. He's to us, right? He was available to them. He made himself as available as possible. It actually got to the point that all of these multitudes came, and he had to tell them to go to the side so that he could be about his business of going to the cross, which was the main thing that he was after. He really was supposed to be there to go toward the cross so that he could not just save their physical bodies, but save their souls. And so even in the midst of going about that business, like we said earlier, he still made time as much as he could to heal people physically and help them and encourage them and bless them. And he still, to this day, like I said with Shauna, he has a goal for you. He created you. He has purpose for you. But as you go along, he's going to care for you and provide for your needs, because that's what he does. And he's a good God. It does come with this idea, though, that as followers of him, that we have to understand that there are some things we might need to give up. He gives these couple of examples. This scribe came to him and said, I'll follow you wherever you go. And Christ always hits home with these people. He addresses them where it's a problem for them. And he's like, oh, okay. He's like, well, foxes have holes and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. And essentially he's saying, you're not going to have a home.
The Lord was always traveling. He was always going from here to there. In the Gospel of Mark, it says straightway he went here, straightway he went there. I mean, he had a mission. He only had a few years to go from this point to the cross, and he had a lot to get done. So again, people want to follow him here, and he's explaining that you'll have to give up earthly comforts to follow the Lord, and sometimes we do today.
You have to think about Christ had 12 disciples, and all the time in the Bible we read about these multitudes that followed him, but there's really only the 12 that went with him all the way, so to speak. And that's because they had to give up things like this.
Mhm.
You could probably go to any state in the US and you have the entire state full of people that claim to be Christians all in a row. But if you made them have to give up their home for an undetermined amount of time, this isn't just for like, well, it ended up being about 3 years or so, but they didn't know that it could have been any amount of time.
Mhm.
and say, well, you're going to be without a home until, as long as this happens. And really it ended up being the rest of their lives. They traveled for the rest of their lives.
Mhm.
And they had to be like, all right, Lord, that's your will. Let go of their home. And I guarantee you, I think very few would be willing to do that, honestly. And then he says to the other one, another disciple said to him, Lord, let me first go and bury my father. And he says, follow me and let the dead bury their dead. A lot of people, Lord calls them in ministry and they don't want to leave their family. You have family that you care about and you want to make sure you're taking care of them. And he's like, I've called you to something greater. You've got to be willing to let that go. I mean, there are things that you want to do and you want to take care of. And let me tell you something. These are things that we have weighed heavily.
Mhm.
Both of these things. I'm probably more the one who's stuck with the house, and you're probably the one who's more stuck with the family, because I love my family, but I feel like I can love them from a distance.
Mhm.
And he's more like he wants to keep everybody close, right? But at the same time, I like the comfort of having a home base. And I'm a little scared of letting go of that sort of thing. You know what I mean? And he's like, forget the house, rent anywhere. He could care less about that. But I can see how this would be a struggle for people when it comes to following Jesus. And it's funny because back here we have all these people who literally trust him with their lives and with the lives of their friends. And Christ came and healed sick and did all of these great miracles. He's going to calm a storm in a minute. He's going to cast demons from pigs, like all of those things. And yet when it comes to letting go of things like the house, or letting go of things like the care of our family members, we're like, ooh, no, I got to handle that. You know what I mean? We don't want to let it go and let the Lord handle it. And it's like, you really have to, that's where you're recognizing where you really have faith or you don't.
Mhm.
Do I really have faith to go and do something bold, to really go follow the Lord wherever he would have me? I mean, that's a pretty strong dedication, but that's the kind of dedication that the Lord wants.
Let the dead bury their dead. I'm sitting here struggling with a lot of things that I could say, but I don't want to just ramble on all kinds of things.
Sorry, I always ramble.
I know, but sometimes when I do, I get off point. Let the dead bury their dead. Forgive me. I'd say, okay, to follow the Lord, no excuses. A lot of these people who come to the Lord, they always have excuses. Today, many people want to follow the Lord, but they have excuses why they can't do it right now. I'll do it one day. Right now I got to go do this thing, Lord. I got to wait for this to happen. I got to wait for that to happen.
There's always something. Always something.
And to follow the Lord, you have to really put all excuses to rest. And I wrote down that God is the God of the living. We have new life in Christ. And again, I'll say this, that a body can die, but a soul lives on. And unbelievers, they deal with unbelievers' issues. Let the unbelieving issues of life be dealt with by the unbelievers. There are many things that the Lord wants done in life, like the evangelization of the world, like the discipleship of Christians. These are jobs that are meant for Christians, for believers. There are things in this world that should be happening today that the responsibility is to the church to do. The lost world's not given the commission or the job to evangelize the world. The church is. Let the lost world worry about all the issues of life that need to take place. But the church has a very specific mission. It is to preach Jesus so people can have eternal life. It is to disciple those new believers so they can be fruitful people, men and women, who can go out and lead others to Christ. And it's so the kingdom of heaven can grow. I don't know how much more I want to say about that, because I like I said, I don't want to get off on a different subject. But there are all kinds of things in life, and really anybody can do it. I mean, you can make a list of all the things in life that need to happen, all the different responsibilities. Roads need to be paved. Doctors' offices need to be put up, and people need to do this, need to do that. There's all these kinds of things in life that need to happen. You can talk about government, right? And folks, in all seriousness, anybody can do it. But there is a job in this world that only the church has the responsibility of, evangelizing the world so that everyone can know God. Let the dead bury their dead. God's got a job for the living, and the church is alive. And the church's job is to evangelize the world so more people can be alive. And of course, I'm talking about spiritual life, obviously. So I hope you understand that. Let the dead bury their dead. We have a living job that promotes, and there's new life all the time springing up. So springs of living water. So there you go.
I'm not going to go any further today. We're about out of time. But I tell you, that really, that sparks something in me, boy, the idea of just following, just giving up everything and following the Lord. It's, on one hand, it's something that you deeply desire to do. But then when faced with choices, giving up things, that's where it actually hits home and it gets hard. Mm-hmm. So if the Lord's pressing on you to really give up some things and focus on Him and leading others to Him, I hope you'll consider it. I hope you will really, really deeply consider it, because the need is great right now. The need is tremendous. And the opportunities are fewer and fewer. We've really got to focus on the Lord. The same Lord who's able to heal. Same Lord who's able to save. And He can take care of all of our needs.
I'll pray. Father, I thank you for today, and I thank you for the gift of salvation. And I pray that all of us will have a encouraged and motivated heart to follow you today. Lord, I pray that we would follow you and we would give you our whole heart. And I pray that we would be willing to lay aside things, to abandon things that get in the way of our service to you. I pray that we would have no excuses, but we would be willing to be used of you to serve in any way that you would see fit for us. Lord, thank you for the gift of service. Thank you for thinking of us and the promise that you'll never forsake us. We praise you today for being the God that heals and the God that saves, and being the one true God that we all can put our faith in. We love you today. In Christ's name, amen.
All right. Thank you all for being with us. Come back tomorrow and we will finish.
Yes.
Matthew chapter 8. Shauna said that she thought demons and pigs sounded funny. Come back tomorrow and you'll hear the full story, Shauna.
Demons and pigs.
It sounds crazy, but it happened.
One preacher said deviled pork.
All right. You guys have a good day. We'll see you next time.
Bye.